There he is. There's the guy. All right, let's turn down this cheesy music. Let's get into this.
And I was kind of stunned to learn, or to perceive at least, that the theists seemed to have the intellectual initiative in each of these big discussions, that materialism was a philosophy that was a spent force. It was not explaining where life first came from or the universe came from, let alone consciousness. And so I began, in a sense, on a kind of intellectual journey to see where these new evidences, the evidence for the beginning of the universe, or the fine-tuning of the universe, or the thing that really intrigued me was the discovery that at the foundation of life, and even the very simplest cells, we have this amazingly complex code. That DNA, we all learn about it in high school. We think that, we all learn about the double helix structure of the DNA molecule, but that's not the most important thing about it. It's that within that double helix, there is literally a code, a digital information that is directing the construction of the important proteins and protein machines that every cell needs to stay alive.
Right there is also something that the Evo proponent cannot account for using evolution. They talk about evolution once they grant themselves complex coded instructional packets. Like, they don't like to use, have you guys noticed they don't like to use the word code? Some of them do. Some of them will just do it just for the sake of, like, talking about it. But if you really think about it, like, that's biology being informed, but yet they hold a view that it's accidentally producing informative instructional packets. So forget the liver for a second, because this is an entailment of this problem. Forget the liver. The packet itself that instructs a future apparatus inside the body or whatever, it still has an instruction packet. And the evotards have to also say that not only is the liver an accidental phenomenon of biology that has hyper-specialized function, but they actually have to say the instruction packet itself is a feature of this accidental mutative process. Totally accidental. By the way, the word, this didn't come up in the debate, but the term mutation linked to the term error. How can you talk about an error unless there is a purpose, unless there is a target? You can't talk about an error. Can you imagine doing a driving course as a student driver and you fail to put your blinker on and they go, "Oh, you made an error," and you're all, "No, I didn't. This whole drive has been accidental. The whole thing. The car is accidental. A right turn is accidental. The roads are accidental. The destination is accidental." And they're like, "Pull over the car, kid. We're changing seats. You've lost your mind." Forget about you failing to put on your blinker. Your mind is melted. Code implies a coder, right? And an encoder and a decoder.
Bill Gates has said it's like a software program, but much more complex than any we've ever created. And I was doing at the time, for the work as a geophysicist for an oil company, I was doing seismic digital signal processing, which was an early form of information technology. And I got fascinated with the idea that there was this, first of all, an impasse in evolutionary explanations of the origin of life. Nobody knew how we got from the chemistry in the prebiotic soup to the code soup in an actual living cell.
Soup to code.
But I was fascinated that the impasse was created
Sup, Abby
by
Zong?
the mystery surrounding the origin of information. Where did that come from? And so a year later, I was off to grad school in England. I ended up doing a PhD in origin of life biology within a history and philosophy of science department in Cambridge. And so that's kind of a sketch of my journey and how I got interested in this. I saw in one of your previous interviews you said that you were very interested in origin stories. And
yeah.
Me too. That was the...
Well, it's always interesting when you see someone who's kind of dedicated their life to a very specific thing. Like what...
It's crazy. The Gene?
Jimbob.
Yeah.
Yes, Vagine is here. Thanks to the kind donations of your many intelligent fans, Vagine has not been fired despite many threats. I remain, as you all say, neutral.
You are neutral.
To the up our driveway, get the newspaper, reading the big fat family Bible that I'd never make sense about reality, that every cause has an effect. Being by a group of evolutionary biologists who were essentially dissatisfied with neo-Darwinism, the standard textbook theory that we learn in all high school and college textbooks, and many of them were saying we need a new theory of evolution. The first talk at that conference was given by Gerd Müller, a prominent Austrian evolutionary biologist, and he simply enumerated the five major what he called explanatory deficits of neo-Darwinism. And his basic perspective was the mutation selection mechanism does a good job of optimizing or modifying pre-existing forms. It can generate small-scale variation, but it does a very poor job of explaining the origin of those forms. Think about, for example, Darwin's finch beaks. Great job of explaining how variations in weather patterns result in changes in the shape and structure of the finch beaks. But that mechanism turns out not to do a good job of explaining the origin of birds or other major animal groups in the first place. So
there we go. So it's exactly the argument I use. If the phenomenon is variation, not just of species, but variation within a species, then the mechanism that they're arguing for under evolution would explain the populations you're looking at. Forget the minuscule changes. The very population you're looking at, that's what it has to explain. They're like, no, we have the population. We're explaining beaks and changing things. And because those things change, animals change. No, that's an extrapolation fallacy. That's actually some sort of composition fallacy. It's like what's true of the part, in this case, bird beaks, must be true of the wholeness of all things. That's like looking at the baby in the womb and seeing it change, right, from this small creature to the full, near full human form, the way we know a human to look, and saying because that changed, then humans themselves must have changed. They basically take the womb, take the baby in the womb, and the process, go outside of the womb and say this must have also happened over millions of years. It's a logical leap. It's a flaw.
So modification, yes. Innovation, no.
But
So
modification over massive amounts of time, don't you think that would eventually lead to new groups? Because
No, time doesn't do anything, Joe Rogan. Why?
a lot of new groups have similar origins, or at least origins from one ancestor.
well, time.
primates.
Yeah, time was always the hero of the plot. But let me
Time.
let me just run
Okay.
a couple of arguments by you, and let's see what
Okay.
you think. Okay, and I developed these in a lot of detail in my book Darwin's Doubt. If we now know, thanks to the genetic revolution, the molecular biological revolution, that if you want to build a new form of life, you have you have to have new code, because all new forms of life depend upon new anatomical, a fundamentally new type of animal, for example. So you need new anatomical structures but the new anatomical structures require new cell types, new types. So if you got animals that first come on the line and they have a digestive system, they have a gut. Well, you got to have enzymes that can service a gut, that can process food. So enzymes are types of proteins. Proteins are built from the informational code in DNA.
This is why irreducible complexity, which is not even an argument I used in the debate, this is what points to it. It's like he looked at the flagellum and that was enough to argue, well, you couldn't have the whole without each of the parts. So you can't say each of the parts developed independently because there's no use of that part. For instance, if you said the liver developed without the body to serve the body, then why would the liver exist to begin with? It's similar. He's right. You look at the body, you look at even something as small as the flagellum. So either way, this argument, this critique holds up. It's like, think about this. Imagine developing some type of vein that the future of its purpose was to transport blood, but it didn't have blood yet, right? Or imagine just like like the earliest form, some early form of an organism that's just like a blood balloon. It's like a water balloon, but it's blood. And then it accidentally develops super vein highways to transport blood to what? Or other things that don't exist yet? And if the thing that exists needs blood, then you have to say that the thing that you developed that needs blood also was created accidentally before blood developed. So it's like, thank you, Vagine, for $10. It's like God knew. Obviously, he knew. He knows all. But God, like, he trolled the atheists. He was like, I'm going to make a creation that to these atheists, these people who reject God, they're gonna actually believe the most insane things. They're going to believe the most insane things. They're going to be extremely foolish in their pride. They're going to be proud of their pride. It's like a meta pride. And they are.
So anytime you want to get it's just like in the computer world. If you want to give your computer a new function, you've got to provide new code. So we have these long digital bit strings of A's, C's, G's, and T's, not zeros and ones, but A's, C's, G's, and T's in a digital string, and we call that a gene. And if you have a section of DNA for building a protein, that's great, all works. Now, but if you want to build a fundamentally new form of life, you got to have new proteins to service the new cell types to build the new anatomical structures.
Accidentally, build them accidentally.
In our computer world, we know that if you start randomly changing the zeros and ones in a section of digital code, you're going to degrade the function of that code long before you come up with a new string for making a new program or operating system. That the functional
Look at this is how retarded atheists are. Look at the atheists. I love you, but babies grow from one cell, big to a newborn baby in 9 months. Yeah. What is that? Yeah, and they didn't do that without a human. Two humans. Notice how this is a microcosm of how the Evo proponent argues. They grant themselves the two humans that were required to make the baby. They look at the baby in a vacuum and say, look, the baby went from one cell to a full-formed multicellular in 9 months. Yeah. Because there were parents. This is equivalent to the problem they have for themselves. The parents in this case are equivalent to the population in this example with atheists here in the chat. They grant themselves a population, in this case, 2 parents. Atheist grants himself 2 parents, then says, look, a baby can grow from one cell. Right? No. How did it develop where 2 humans, through evolution, were able to develop and produce, come together, have sex? I don't know if you know what that is, atheist. Have sex and then a baby's born. You're like, yeah, but the baby just grew. Based on your view, the baby could have grown without the parents. That's what you're arguing, dummy. You're arguing you didn't need the parents. There's just a baby growing. Well, if that were true, why didn't we just grow as humans from cells without sex? Just grow. Just no sex needed. No fertilization needed. No other human body needed. Just grow. Just grow. And it's just so stupid, man. Atheist says at one point it wasn't 2 humans. Yeah, prove that. That's what you're. You notice that? Do you know what that is, atheist? That's called an assertion. At one point there wasn't 2 humans. It was 2 monkeys, and this baby. Dude, you have nothing, dude. Call in. I dare you. I dare you. Call in and tell me the story. How random mutation. By the way, you need monkeys now. Notice how he just kicks the can back further. This doesn't solve any problem for you, dude, because now you need to explain how you got 2 monkeys, dummy. You monkey? What are you, some sort of George Floyd? What do you got, George Floyd syndrome?
Sequences are they're highly isolated in what's called sequence space. You can change a few things and still retain function, but after a very few number of changes, you're going to degrade the function, and long before you come up with a new function. Now, the Darwinian mechanism starts with the idea that there are random changes in those digital bit strings, those sequences of A's, C's, G's, and T's, and based on our experience in the computer world, we would expect that random changes are going to, again, degrade those strings.
Dude, look at Atheist comment. That's why I think he's a troll. I actually think he's a Christian doing an epic troll. He says, the newborn need the mom body to grow, just like the parents. Did anyone else read that in the dumb voice? Anybody? Did anybody read that in the...
What would you say if I told you I was mentally retarded?
I'd say you probably don't believe in God.
Strings long before they're capable of building a new protein. And there's now very compelling experimental evidence that that's true. There's an Israeli molecular biologist, Dan Tofik. Unfortunately,
am I a predator of any sorts, a hunter? No, I never learned to hunt. I would hunt if I learned it and if I needed to. But I'm not in the situation where I need to hunt. But no, I'm a predator of bad philosophy, Duck. It's an interesting question. Why do you ask? Why do you ask? A nice guy? No, I don't think being nice is equal to not killing animals. I would kill an animal in a second. I've killed animals. In fact, one time, me and my brother, because we grew up in the country, we saw a rabid raccoon and we stoned it to death, like Lord of the Flies. And we were like 12 or something. It was pretty epic. I'm pretty proud of that.
Last Sunday was our second liturgy. It was also the annual visit of the Archbishop.
Oh, nice.
We stayed for fellowship, spoke with the priest, and exchanged numbers/emails with him. We'll attend classes soon.
Glory to God, Jessica. W's in the chat for the Bowmans. Shout out to Extanglia for taking the step. And shout out to Jessica for waiting for Extanglia. Good on you. Good on you, gal. Good on you. That's amazing. I can't wait. I'm just so pumped for you guys. You look very much closed to things. Wait, what? You look very much closed to things? Like you're seeking a life force right now? I don't know what that means, Duck. Are you high on something? I don't know what you mean. I'm seeking a life force? What are you gibberating about? Get your life together, Duck. Duck, go to Divine Liturgy, dude. It's there for you too, buddy. You don't need to do anything. You can just go experience it. You know, get some other aspect of your existence, some experience. Add some new input from your view. There's nothing. It can't. How could it hurt you, Duck? Come on, Duck. That's what I really want. I want Duck to call in and be like, "Well, I went." Even if he rejected it, I would still want to hear his take, Duck. That's how much I love you.
He died fairly recently in a tragic accident, but he was doing mutagenesis experiments on sequences.
Enslaved by Truth says that's the first sign you're a sociopath if you kill a rabid animal. That's funny. Enslaved by Truth. Imagine telling all of our our ancestors who lived off the land and hunted when they taught their kid how to shoot a deer for the first time. Imagine some modern brain saying you're a... I know Enslaved by Truth doesn't actually believe that, but it's kind of funny. Can you imagine taking that psychologizing view to the majority of human history and being like, son, I'm glad you shot your first buck at age 10. That's a big deal in your masculine right. But mom says that it's an early sign of being a sociopath, son. And the son is like, looks at the dad. And then they both look down at the dad's stomach, and the son has already plunged a knife into the dad. Not because he's a sociopath, because he just realized his dad was gay. Wi-Fi Gospel, $5. How much money do we have to super chat to get a 12-year-old Jimbob stoning a raccoon animation? That's actually funny. Now that I told the story, it's not long enough. It's not very long, so I could do that.
Accident is not actually tragic according to evolution.
That's right.
I thought they loved natural selection.
That's right. Well, they would say it's not natural, but then you'd be like, well, isn't any technology that humans make some sort of extension of nature? Not that it is nature, but to make it from a human. So a beaver makes a dam out of wood. If the beaver made a dam out of fake elements that we gave it and just happened to use them, would it be natural? Would it be a naturally made thing just because it's not made out of wood?
Of sequences of code for building specific proteins that fold it into stable structures. They're actually called protein folds. And he found that between 3 and 15 mutations was enough to degrade the thermodynamic stability of the protein structure that the gene was making. Mm-hmm. And once you lose that thermodynamic stability, you have no functional possibilities.
Is there possibly an undiscovered mechanism for protecting against that we're not aware of yet?
Possibly, but there's numerous lines of evidence suggesting that that mutations are within limits. You can modify again. You can optimize an existing protein structure called a fold. But if you allow too many of those mutations, you're going to degrade. And long before you would get a fundamentally new protein structure, another protein fold. So that's just one of many.
This is why the modern conception of evolution, the people who are back at work trying to figure it out, their narrative is they're trying to increase the speed of evolution as a narrative, because someone like Stephen Meyer and many others who have showed that whether it's what he just referred to, that mechanism of protein folding and making, or earlier complex carbohydrates that they just grant themselves, bind themselves together through natural processes accidentally by luck. It's also demonstrated that those things, having exposure to things like heat, the sun, the cold, whatever the elements are not in favor of it developing. Even if you granted a magical development of these things, the elements with time are not in favor of these things.
Run one other argument by you that I think is very intuitive. If you want to build, it turns out.
Rachel, sunglasses, yeah. You know why, Rachel? Because my debate, which is a big for me, hit 10,000 views in a day. So I feel like I should be signing autographs, so I'm wearing these glasses.
Turns out that there are
I'm a rock star.
There are structures or
freaking rock star
building that are very important for building new animal body plans, and they're called developmental gene regulatory networks. They were discovered at Caltech by Eric Davidson and colleagues. Eric Davidson has also unfortunately recently passed away in the last few years. But what they discovered is that you not only have genes for building proteins, you have genes that are building for constructing molecules that send signals.
You know what's also interesting? You'd think after millions of years of evolution, it would demonstrate that all of the species, because the story is, well, they develop accidental features that aid to survival. And you notice how none of the features is figuring out how to live, 3 times as long? Like age-wise, just naturally, like the first thing you would, that would be likely to develop wouldn't be how to melt the insides of the rat intestines from a snake's perspective so you can digest it, but how to deal with and respond to the environment itself, which is the cause, absent some higher population of predators. The first predator would be the elements. The first predator would be the elements. And so isn't it the case, now I could be wrong about this, but isn't it the case that there's evidence that animals of the past and humans may have, not recent past, but like some animals may have lived even much longer than they do now? So notice how like that's never in the cards. It's like, oh, it developed an accidental fang with accidental proteins that accidentally melt the inside of a rat that they accidentally eat. Towards survival, just happens to be towards survival. And you're like, well, it's interesting. There's never a mutation that made an animal live to like some insane age. No? And that's funny is like from that view, that could be possible under evolution. And yet when someone goes, if they're like a Christian and they hold that there was a time in which humans lived like an absurdly longer life than they do now, they're like, you're insane. You're insane, Jimbob.
That tell the genome when to express other parts of itself. So you've got there's signaling molecules that are telling the genome when to turn this part or that part on in order to build the right proteins at the right time as new cells are going through cell division in the process of animal development. So if you go from 1 cell to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16, et cetera, you've got to, and as you have a developing animal form, there are points in that trajectory where it's important to differentiate one type of cell from another, and for certain types of cells, muscle cells as opposed to nerve cells. Or
there's an immortal jellyfish? That can't be the case. That's funny, though. An immortal jellyfish. Obviously, I mean, if you have a jellyfish and it goes into a volcanic eruption, I want one as a pet then. If there's an immortal jellyfish, can you guys find it? I want to get my daughter one.
Or bone cells to start to be constructed.
Oh, here we're gonna get educated from atheist here. I'm so glad he's here or she's here. When there were more oxygen on the Earth, 300 million to 400 million years ago, cool. how'd you verify that? First of all. There were bigger insects the size of flying cars around everywhere in the trees. Yeah, okay. Cool. Now I know you're a theist. Now I know you're an expert troll. And now I love you even more, atheist. Just good work. I mean, you outed yourself. You shouldn't have done that, but I'm kind of glad I know now, but at the same time, you outed yourself. So the gig's up. Atheist is officially a Christian who's trolling and doing an excellent job. Christopher Scott, $5. That's what I think the ultimate irony of Evotards is. Basically, everything is possible. Yeah, and then they're like, how can it be? Didn't you learn about land whale? Shout out to land whale.
And all of this is closely choreographed by these signaling molecules. So you get DNA that builds regulatory RNA that turns on another part of the DNA that then turns on, that builds a protein for servicing a particular type of cell at the right time and not at another time.
Accidentally.
And as Davidson and his colleagues mapped this out, they discovered that the functional relationships that were involved looked like an integrated circuit. It was, and they call them developmental gene regulatory networks. And the point is, you can't build a completely developed animal form unless you have this choreography taking place that is expressed through these developmental gene regulatory networks. But they discovered something else about them, and that is that they cannot be altered significantly. If you alter any of the core elements of these developmental gene regulatory networks, animal development shuts down. And this makes perfect sense to anyone with a background in, say, electrical engineering, because there's a principle of engineering that says the more tightly integrated a functional system, and the more difficult it is to perturb any part of the system without defect to the whole. It's a constraints principle.
Right. It's the same principle to code, right? Like you can't just swap out a section. It's a continuity issue. In other words, it's a continuity issue. 300 to 400 million years ago is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids world, pretty much. Yep.
And this turned out to be true in spades of these effectively integrated circuits. Now, they weren't controlling the flow of electricity, but more the flow of information in the developing organism. So here's the argument. You need a developmental gene regulatory network to make an animal body plan. But if you want to turn one animal body plan into another animal body plan, you're going to have to change developmental gene regulatory network A into a completely novel developmental gene regulatory network to build that novel animal.
Accidentally. I wish he would just use the same word every time like me. Accidentally.
Form. But the one thing we know experimentally is these things cannot be altered without the destruction of the initial form. And once that form is destroyed, there's no more evolutionary development possible. Now, it turns out that not only neo-Darwinism, the kind of standard textbook form of evolutionary theory, has no answer for this. And Davidson was quite explicit about this. He was, by the way, no friend of creationism or intelligent design, but he said very explicitly that neo-Darwinism commits a catastrophic error in thinking because it is not addressing this fundamental problem. There's no but it's not just neo-Darwinism. There's also newer models of evolutionary theory.
Can I touch on the penal substitutionary atonement on X? Maybe another stream, Marilyn. I appreciate the $10. I did touch on that on a previous stream, how atonement, the way we understand atonement, even original sin from an Orthodox perspective, the terms we can accept the terms, but no, the substitute aspect. The view, essentially, Marilyn, would reduce to God the Father damned his Son. That's what you'd have to believe. That's the consequence. So atonement is something that it's acceptable, but PSA is not. It's your entire, basically kind of like your Christology fails among other things. Your soteriology itself it gets all wonky. And there's also plenty of videos if you want. Marilyn, if the answer you're asking me would be from an Orthodox perspective, there are plenty of videos that'll come up on YouTube from an Orthodox priest going through this, or you can search a video. I'm sure Jay has a video on it as well. It's a good distinction, though, Marilyn, to look into because you're able to separate the part that's true about atonement and this, and then remove what's been added as an innovation. Luca, $7. My favorite thing that evolutionists say is, quote, it just makes sense to develop this trait. Yeah, accidentally. Makes sense to what? Yeah, what is it? Yeah, accidental sense. This accident makes sense. Dude, it's wild.
And they don't address this either. This is so there are these sort of fundamental challenges to the creative power of mutation and selection and other similarly undirected materialistic processes that have not been answered, and they seem pretty fundamental. What it looks like when you look at it, I've got a picture of it in two of my books. These networks, they look like circuits, and circuits in our experience are the product of engineers, of intelligence. I mean, we're looking at distinctive hallmarks of intelligent agency when we look at circuitry and code and information processing systems. I mean, this is what we're finding inside life. It's not what Darwin thought in the 19th century, or his colleagues, Huxley, who said the cell was a simple homogeneous globule of undifferentiated protoplasm. It's a new day in biology. Things are much more complex than people thought when they formulated these evolutionary ideas.
That's a key thing, not to commit a genetic fallacy or anything that might be included as a fallacy in this assumption, is that, like, if you think about the paradigm of evolution, once you look at it and you see that it's built on flawed assumptions, what they do is they keep the paradigm and then they try to sort of say, no, we don't accept those assumptions anymore, even though the paradigm itself was built on the assumptions. So what they do instead is they keep the paradigm, they dismiss the old assumptions, and then they try to smuggle new assumptions to keep the paradigm. That's the wholeness of evolution. That's the entire bit right there. It's like Mormons. There's a sort of like the starting point foundation for Mormonism, and you look into the past of Mormonism and what it posits, theologically speaking, and its entailments. And then New Mormonism, LDS, comes along and says, no, that's not what we believe. Those are just these old assumptions, and they're, we don't really look at those anymore. We don't look at the neutrals like that anymore. That's all over. But they keep the foundation. They keep not the foundation. They keep the narrative of Mormonism while rejecting all the bricks that produce the false narrative. Do you understand? Like, this is what evolution does. It's built on faulty, broken, sandy, wet bricks. They remove the bricks and do like a swap. You know what I mean? It's like a modular house that's on bricks. And they're like, keep this modular house trailer and do a quick brick swap. That's what they do.
There's a lot to talk about here.
Sorry, that was a long answer.
It was very long. It's very hard to keep up with you. But when you're talking about this process and this first of all, I want to go back one step further. You were saying something about, and I'm paraphrasing, but whatever this intelligent thing is, creating us somehow or another in its image, or somehow or another thinking the way it thinks. How did you say that again?
Yeah, this was the idea of the early scientists who got science going. It was the way they've talked about it was the intelligibility of the universe. It was intelligible. It could be understood by us because our minds had been made in the image or likeness of the creator of the universe itself.
Isn't it just possible that our minds are complex and curious, and so we're trying to figure out what all these things are and what DNA is and what molecules and that. We're trying to figure out the very fiber of existence itself. What is it made out of?
Yeah, but then your mind would have to be made out of something. This is materialism. Unfortunately, Joe suffers from materialism. Even the question, did you hear the question he asked? Well, why isn't it, he just grants himself this metaphysical thing called the mind. And he's like, what if the mind just kind of, the way it is just inquisitive and is trying to figure out the nature of reality? Well, sorry, Joe, but the mind would also need to be part of the nature of the reality. So the question ends up being about what reality is and whether or not reality consists of immaterial, invisible, and visible. Well, it does, obviously. Reality is composed of material, and there is an immaterial aspect to reality. I wish more people could just get this basic distinction, and that you don't have to reject either. You can hold to there's a material reality, and you can hold to there's a conceptual realm or an abstract realm, a transcendental realm. For the lack of a better term, it's not a location, it's not a structure, it's not a platonic form that's floating in space, but it's necessary to describe reality. You need to assume the immaterial to describe the material. There's no way around this, materialists. There's no way around this.
Any curious, self-aware creature start to contemplate these things. And if it really is an intelligent force that made us to think the way it thinks, why would it have war? Why would it have murder? Why would it have all the horrific crimes that we see, drug addictions? Why would it create us in a form like that?
Yeah, I mean, there was the background of this. Let's start with the first question. I'll get to the second question.
Okay.
Still haven't heard a coherent
I just wanna know-
equally profound and good question. The
fully functioning reproductive systems just happening to exist at the same time.
Sorry, I'm going to read that again because I interrupted it, Fredo. Still haven't heard a coherent argument for male-female pairs with fully functioning reproductive nubs. Yeah. It's one of the funnest arguments, right? The nubby. Shout out to Jay Dyer, who developed the nub. And I ran with it because it's just so damn funny. A nub dick. And then the inverse dent. The vag, the proto-vag. Handsome Cat says, Jimbob the ape yapping about imaginary Jewish gods again. Well, you're also, from your own view, an ape yapping about the imaginary thing called the truth because you're making truth claims. So, you know, you're just as delusional as me. Congratulations. Welcome to the delusional chat, Handsome Cat.
The historians of science have asked a question. It's the why then, why there question.
Why daddy?
We've had all these great civilizations.
Why daddy mean?
Egyptians made the pyramids, as you and I were talking about. We had the...
we are made in the image of God. We are human. We're imperfect. Dude, it's not a Christian view, atheist. You're ignoring the fall. Much like Stephen Meyer is looking like he's about to ignore the fall.
The Chinese had gunpowder. The Romans built aqueducts.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, in Western Europe, in the 16th and 17th centuries, and I think the antecedents for that go back a little further, you get these very systematic methods for studying nature arising. And you get this concern to use mathematics to describe the order in nature. And you get this incredibly productive, historians of science call it the scientific revolution. Something really dramatic changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different than other civilizations. And as they've examined what happened,
How is the image of God not perfect? Well, you have to figure out what the word image means, Marilyn. Image isn't the form of God. Image isn't the picture. It's not a photograph of God. Right? So image bearer, if you want to look into what image bearer refers to, you're going to have to go to Orthodox theology. You can't just run with your own concept of what image means. That's all you guys really end up doing, unfortunately. It's just lazy.
they said, well, the material, the material substrate or the things you would need to do science were in all the other cultures, and there were many great cultures. But this systematic method of studying nature uniquely arose in Western Europe in a particular time, in a particular context. And many, many historians of science have come to the conclusion that the thing that was...
Are there no other options than Christian and atheists? Yeah, there's, Kevin, how there's no other options. The reason is, Kevin, I say this, is because there's a very limited amount of starting assumptions about epistemology and metaphysics, even absent morality, which you really can't avoid. But the reason that is like there's not a lot of options, right? There's not a lot of options. So even if you pick another theology, Kevin, whatever other theology you pick is going to have all of its first starting assumptions about knowledge. Do they have a revelatory? Can they know God? What's their moral system? You can look at all of these things. What's their metaphysics? And the reason I say it's only Christian is because only the Christian view can account for the transcendental categories in an exhaustive way. The atheist can't, but certainly neither can a Hindu, neither can a Muslim, neither can a pagan. They can't. They don't have a worldview. They have parts of worldviews, but they can't defend the wholeness of the worldview.
Was the difference that made the difference was the worldview, was the philosophical assumptions of those Western European scientists who were almost entirely coming out of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And one of the key assumptions that they had was that systematic study of nature was actually possible. It's actually very hard to do science. It's very hard to see a pattern in what can initially seem to be a chaotic jumble of sense data. And these thinkers had the conviction that there were such patterns, there was rationality, there was order behind things, because there was a God who had made the universe to be orderly and to be understood. So that was just one of those thought differences or differences in thinking that historians have identified as a key feature that explains why the scientific revolution happened, where it's a fruitful way of investigating nature.
It certainly.
Something that persuaded me that about theism initially before.
But how do you respond to that?
I would say that those are predisposing inclinations that are probably necessary to explain the behavior, but not sufficient. That I think even in the face of things that incline us towards certain courses of action, we still have choice. And I think there's a lot of brain physiological research that shows that that supports the idea that the mind is not completely determined by the neurophysiological correlates or the underlying.
Right.
Let me just elaborate on this. The consequence, if it were the case that the mind or evaluations and truth claims and conclusions were strictly determined by physical phenomenon, then they would be determined results. And so studying this phenomenon, as he said, when we study the brain and neurologists and Sam Harris talk about this stuff, they always miss this part. If it were the case that all of your thoughts and evaluations were completely determined by strict physical phenomenon and mechanisms, you couldn't even know if your conclusions were true or not, even in the studying of neurology and the brain. So you'd be like, it's just kind of a funny meme where there's a neurologist studying a brain, and then he comes to the conclusion that all of his conclusions about studying the brain are completely determined. And then you go, well, how do you know that your conclusions about studying the brain, that they're completely determined, is correct if your own conclusions would be determined about studying the brain? Sort of a meta, I don't know if that's technically a reductio, but it's a meta counter to the ridiculousness of the statement, of the position. It's so stupid. It's another stupid entailment. It is an entailment of evolution, by the way. Because if evolution was true, everything that's expressed through biology would be also determined, which includes your own thinking, your own beliefs. You know, the evolution proponent is like, why are you Christians like this? And you're like, I thought you already knew the answer, bro. We evolved to be like this. We evolved to believe in God. We evolved to deny evolution according to you. Why are you confused? You should be like, oh, the theist is evolved. In fact, under the evolutionary view, this is the great irony of it. Under the evolutionary view, theism and the belief of God is actually more recent. It's actually primitive to not believe in God on a chronological view. Think about that. That the most primitive view would be godless. That gods would be, even if you took their approach, that they're all fictional, that they're all illusory, that they're all constructs. Construct itself points to, from the evolutionary view, points to some sort of elevated new feature of humanity, even if it was false. Primitive would be godless. Believing in God from the evolutionary view would be advanced. It would be an advanced feature from their view. That's what's so stupid about it.
Brain chemistry.
Are we isolating for any reason?
What's that?
Are we isolating these two variables for any reason, whether it's determinism or free will? Like, why does one have to win out? Are we not?
I would agree. I think but if you allow any free will at all, then we're not completely determined. in which
but no one's saying completely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. Well, then
people do.
Determinism
people
do.
proponents are.
then we're agreeing, Joe. I once heard an excellent lecture from Berkeley philosopher of mind, John Searle, and he was the guy who did that famous Chinese room paradox. And
What is that? It's not that famous.
Well, okay, let's
Sorry, go ahead.
bracket, and I'll get to the main point.
Okay.
The main thing is, and he showed that with all the research we've had in brain science and neuroscience, we've shown that there are lots of things that are necessary conditions of certain brain states, and necessary conditions, physiological, necessary physiological. So to have a certain brain state, there must be there are underlying physiological correlates.
Here comes Vagine. Hot take from Vagine.
Jimbob, thank you for validating my existence.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that I like sniffing cow poo, I'm still in a better position than that silly taco guy and the scrawny duck boy. Ja 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 ja.
Ja 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 ja. Thank you, Vagine. We love you. I still want to fire you. I just don't know who to replace you with. Epic Skeptic, $10. Just a quick reminder, on this channel, we believe Black Lives Matter, women's rights are human rights, no human is illegal, science is real, love is love, and kindness is everything. Which channel? Your channel? Skeptic? Epic Skeptic? Is that your channel? Well, so you believe in the bumper stickers? Well, I went through a phase where I believed in bumper stickers too. So, prayers for your channel and everyone who watches. Thank you for the $10.
That must be in place to have their to
Cow
use that brain
cane,
state to make a certain
sniffing
course of
cow
action,
cane,
to
nicely
accomplish
done.
A certain course of action.
Decent
Also,
exposure.
There are necessary
Cow cane.
necessary conditions, necessary correlates. But he showed that. But we've never in the research showed that closed the gap between necessary and sufficient. That just because those states are there doesn't mean that someone is forced to make that choice or to undertake that course of action. And so I think you're
aware of that as a person, though, right? You know?
I'm aware of that as a person all the time. I wake up grumpy in the morning because I didn't get enough sleep. It doesn't mean I have to slap one of my kids.
Of course, yeah.
So,
but that's why it's kind of a combination of the things.
It is a combination, but in saying it's a combination, you and I are.
Handsome Cat, $2. Morals come from an evil, jealous God named Yahweh. Really? Well, can you tell me, Handsome Cat, what evil means? Because if you say evil, that means there's good, and so now you need a standard for good, and if it's not the God of the Bible, your statement requires some justification for good to say something's evil. So I have a feeling not only can you not afford answering that question, I appreciate the $2, but there's no way you could answer that question, Handsome Cat. You just don't know what you're saying when you say it, and especially in this chat. If you're in this chat, we're going to isolate what you're saying so quickly and be like, oh, look at the assumption. He said evil. Look, he said morals. You've just necessitated the God that you deny, bro. That's what you did.
What would you say if I told you I was mentally retarded?
Let's say go to church. It'll still help you.
They're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
There's an element of agency that is retained. I would say for almost all people. I do think there are people who have lost it, if you will, in the sense. I mean, I think there is a.
Stop babbling and answer the question. Where's the question, bro? Oh, you asked a question. I'm sorry. I really apologize. I thought you were making a statement. Morals come from an evil, jealous God named Yahweh. Yeah. You're still. Look. If you put a question mark or a period on the sentence or the question, it doesn't change my answer. You are assuming evil has some type of definition. You've just necessitated an all-good God. You can't say evil, Handsome Cat, without assuming good. If you called in and you said anything was evil, I guarantee you I would seam rip your blankie and send you back to the crib with a binky in like 3 questions. And it's not because I'm wearing sunglasses, but it helps.
Legitimate insanity plea.
Sure.
But it's been way overused.
Speaking of, we're at 18 of 50 of the goal. Thank you so much for everyone who donated. For those of you who haven't, don't be a freeloader, right? If you enjoy the show, support the show. You could either do that by being a member. You could even send a little bit of a super chat, $2, $5, right? What? You probably buy a $5 Starbucks and write your silly name on it. So today's theme is don't be a freeloader. And we need a lot more shame for freeloaders.
Because we have an underlying commitment to materialism and determinism. Here, let me tell you a story that.
Yeah, but let me step in.
Yeah, go ahead.
We also have psych drugs. You know, there's a real issue with that as well. There's a lot of people that are on.
Handsome Cat says I'm right here. Okay, yeah, so you're right here. Can you answer a question? Tell me how you determine something is evil.
Are on medications, and medications have horrible side effects.
Before,
Right.
Religious belief.
Amoebas, and
we get the first scientific evidence that helps us to answer that question. Coming into the 20th century, most physicists assume
Thank you, Christopher.
that the universe is eternal. It's infinite. It's past eternal. You can go back as far as you want. There's always matter. There's always energy. There's always space. There's always time. In the 1920s, Edwin Hubble is at Mount Wilson in Southern California, the big observatory there. He's a lawyer who's come into astronomy at a very propitious time because the astronomers have just started building these great dome telescopes. And they've also been developing photographic technology that allows them to collect a lot more light over a long period of time. And he starts looking at the distant galaxies. No, actually, well, they were nebula. They didn't know whether they were galaxies or not. And there was a debate right up.
Matt Dillahunty says, God's evil based on my own fuzzy, self-centered morality. And my proof? Arguments I stole from the very Christians I reject. Yeah. Yep. Ridge Pounder, $5. The majority decides what's moral unless I disagree with them. Then I decide what's moral. That's right. That's the atheist view.
Up to 1920, whether or not the Milky Way in which we live is the only galaxy, or whether these little smudges that they were detecting on the photographic plates, with a little dot of light with smudges, whether those were other galaxies or just a star with gas around it.
Oh, we got a Muzzy in the chat. I'm a Muslim. God claimed divinity through many revelations. Yeah, from your view, Christian revelations. So you guys need Christian revelation for Islam, but Christianity doesn't need any of Islam. Final holy Quran. Is the Quran created? Muslim? Is the Quran created or uncreated?
And Hubble was able to use some new techniques for measuring distances to distant astronomical objects, in particular to these nebula. And he found that the distance to the Andromeda Nebula was measured at 900,000 light years, but the accepted measurement for the distance across the Milky Way was only 300,000 light years. So clearly the Milky Way could not contain the Andromeda Nebula, so therefore the Andromeda Nebula wasn't just a nebula, it was another galaxy. And in the ensuing years, then, as he uses the big telescopes and these new techniques, he establishes that there are galaxies galore, spiral galaxies, spindle nebula,
Jesus has a father, right? Isn't that a parent? No, a parent would be a temporal reference, essentially, for creatures. Parent. So, no.
So we now know, I think I put in the book, I used the number 200 billion galaxies. I think I've been since corrected that it's another order of magnitude, that astronomers now think there's 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. It's just unbelievable how much our awareness of the vastness of the universe has expanded in really 100 years. It's amazing.
Right.
But this...
Man, Dirk is so dumb. Dirk, you're such a dummy. He says Zeus and Christ essentially are the same, saying the same thing. No, they're not, actually. So what is humility? How does Zeus demonstrate humility? How does Zeus demonstrate defeating death, trampling on sin? What's sin according to Zeus? You don't know what you're talking about, Dirk. You honestly, I think you should be forced to wear a helmet at like Whole Foods. A little cushiony helmet.
The second thing that Hubble discovered is the light coming from those distant galaxies is being stretched out. If you shine light through a prism, it separates into the colors red to violet. And the red light, it corresponds to light with longer wavelengths. And what he's detecting is light that has shifted in these spectral analyses that they do.
Boring.
Other developments.
Can I pause
go ahead.
for a better understanding of what is actually going on rather than just...
You know what pisses me off? Joe Rogan has 20 million subs, right? He has all of the money and resources and people that could do this, and he doesn't do it. I would do this if I could, if it wasn't like a big deal. He doesn't section his streams to topics. You know what I mean? You know that YouTube thing where you can look at sections and skip to the titles? What gives, bro? Help us out a little bit.
saying it all points to this thing? Because it seems like there's data, but it's what you're describing seems like it's possible, at least in the future, to have better detection methods.
Yeah, it's always possible that we can change our minds on things because science is always provisional. But there are many stable theories that have persisted because of a preponderance of evidence that points to and continues to point to the same conclusion. And I think we've had 100 years now where we've had repeated new types of observations that point towards a beginning. And there are two other classes of two other developments in theoretical physics that also, I think, reinforce this, that I also wrote about in the book. One is the singularity theorems that Hawking and Penrose and
Singularity, by the way, is another like type of reification fallacy when people posit this. They look at mathematical theorems that are descriptive, but math is descriptive, not explanatory. But then they come up with a descriptive mathematical attempt to explain physicality. So they smuggle in something called the singularity and try to make sense of it in a physics perspective, in an astrophysics perspective. And all they're doing is taking math and trying to craft some physicality from math. Whereas what we know of math, you can do math without referring to objects. We can do math in our head. But when it comes to physics, if you're using math, you'd be describing something physical that you're observing and measuring. They do it the opposite now. They pay people to be in an office extrapolating mathematical formulas and theorems for hypothetical physical phenomenon. And because they can describe it mathematically, they believe that the physical phenomenon has some type of ontology. It's like kids. It's like, you give them some props or something, and then they imagine they're in a world. It's wild. Handsome Cat, $2. Based on your morality, is Yahweh evil, yes or no? Yahweh, no. No. What do you mean? Why would I don't understand. Why would Yahweh be evil?
And George Ellis proved in the 1960s and 70s. And then there's something called the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, which I think is even a tighter physics proof of a beginning. I think that there is a loophole with the Hawking-Penrose Ellis singularity theorem, although it's I think very suggestive and highly indicative of a beginning. Let me run it just briefly because it's a fun thing to think about. So Hawking is
Yes or no,
black hole
Jimbob?
physics for his
No.
PhD in the 1960s, and he's at Cambridge and he's having these neurological.
This is how stupid his question is. based on your morality, Jimbob, is the grounding for good evil? Based on your morality, Jimbob, is the absolute source of good nature evil? No. Freddie Marrero, Jimbob dodging? No, I'm not. I just answered the question, Freddie retard. The question is completely retarded because God, from my perspective, God, there's no evil without God. It's impossible. If anyone can tell me how you can point to something, call it evil, without necessitating an absolute being standard for good, good luck. I'll give you $1 million that I don't have.
Symptoms, and he's diagnosed with ALS. He gets very, very discouraged. He thinks he's going to quit, and he's encouraged to press on by close.
Jim, I'm a Dodger. Yeah, so I'm the guy who literally gives you guys links to come debate me, but I'm a Dodger. You guys are all just such frail maggots. You know what I mean? You should all just be gathered up and put on a giant frying pan and fed to Komodo dragons.
Close friends, and he does. And he ends up writing this brilliant thesis where he has one chapter where he's thinking about what the cosmologists are talking about, is that we've got this expanding universe, and if the universe is all three of the architects of the steady state model, friendly conditions arising somewhere had to arise somewhere inevitably, and we just happen to be in that lucky universe. And then we are stunned by that, and they call that this observer selection effect. So that's superficially an equally plausible explanation to the fine-tuner argument that might help explain the underlying
I don't care about these
rationale of the inference to design in this case. Hypothesis is that we would get something, we would get life. There would be something. It's certainly more probable on theism that we'd get life given the fine-tuning than it would be given naturalism, where our overwhelming expectation is we'd find one of those life-unfriendly combinations. So there's some kind of second-order probabilistic reasoning involved in this, but I think it's very commonsensical, but it can be unpacked with these sort of deeper.
Is this an egocentric perspective because we are alive? Is it our perspective of life being far more significant than other things in the universe, like the creation of suns? Is this thing that we have where we're attaching intelligent design to something that may just be a property of the universe itself?
I always hear this, like Richard, who was it? Christopher Hitchens. He would use this rhetoric and be like, "The universe doesn't care about you. You think you're so special in the universe. So egotistical to think that your opinions about the things matter." And you're like, there's kind of a type of a performative contradiction in there, because if you're criticizing Christians, in general, this is how it goes. You criticize Christians for holding a view that humans are very special in the universe, right? That creation itself is special in the universe, and that includes animals and all of creation, but particularly humans are special. They're unique. They're peculiar. You couldn't deny it. To deny it would be to appeal to the peculiarity of a human, which is to deny things and argue things. That's a peculiar... Lions aren't denying things. So the contradiction is when these people spew, oh, it's really egotistical and self-centered to think of humanity as special. If that were true, you'd be participating in it by saying a proposition about truth of the matter, about that we should listen. Why should we listen to your criticism if you're not holding the exact position that humans have some sort of special, peculiar position in reality that gives you and I the inclination that we should be listened to, or that we should even say anything to begin with?
we could say that, except that we know that fine-tuning in our experience does result from mind. It's not just that we're interested
in our experience.
Yeah, in our experience.
But limited experience, right? And
right, but that, again, that is the basis of all scientific reasoning.
Right.
Right?
I understand,
So
but it's not a conclusion based on all the data that could possibly be available.
No, that would be to have that would be a certain proof.
Right.
Okay. And there's
I am Muslim says lasagna. He's talking to lasagna. A Bible doesn't say not to believe in the Holy Quran. Hey, Muslim. Who is it you appeal to? Who or what do you appeal to? I am Muslim, for proper, correct interpretation of what the Bible says. Can you just answer that question? Tell us all. We're all dying to know. Being that you just said, well, the Bible doesn't say not to believe the Holy Quran, right? Can you tell us who or what is your authority in your hermeneutics or hermeneutics? Tell me, is it you?
Have in your mind, are you certain?
Am I certain? I have had experiences of
147.
God that
Okay.
make me
Thank you for that. 47.
more confident.
Can you
And so we have in our network of scientists who have been challenging the comprehensive neo-Darwinian account of things. I already alluded to, I think, that the Darwinian process is a real process. They just don't explain everything, right? But in challenging neo-Darwinism, we have found that oftentimes the discussions get very, very hot. And the
Hammer Crashmore with a very generous $20. Appreciate that. Jimbob, evolution has to be real. Otherwise, how can you explain that I used to have a bear name, granted, years ago, and now I go to liturgy? Well, glory to God. That's amazing, Hammer. I evolved, and I ain't gay no more. I am delivered, debunked. Thank you, Hammer, for letting me know that. That's actually awesome. I'd love to hear that. Of course, you know this. Especially that kind of circumstance, I love to hear. Thank you for that. W's in the chat for Hammer.
and there many of our top scientists have been canceled or censored at prestigious places like the Smithsonian or Cambridge University or the Stuttgart Museum of Natural History. There's been and it's people outside the sciences often say, well,
Atheist says the Bible came from the Torah. Did you mean the Torah? I assume you meant the Torah, but the K and the H aren't that close on the keyboard, so I'm wondering.
I can't make sense of that. I mean, isn't science the place where people are supposed to discuss competing ideas and theories openly? How do you explain this impulse to cancel somebody with an alternative view who's at that rank of science?
Yeah.
And I think Ruse's book helps to explain that a bit. You know, that it's not just religious people who have religious beliefs. There can be beliefs that are functioning in a quasi-religious way for people that have a secular or materialistic or naturalistic worldview.
Turok Dinosaur Hunter, epic game. What a callback. Wow, I almost felt and almost like smelled being, what, 15? I really like video games lately. Been playing Battlefield 2084 or whatever it's called. I really like that game.
As well.
Yeah.
And I think we all have to guard against the groupthink that comes from having a closed system of thought and not being aware of the kinds of challenges that can be brought or alternative points of view.
Lasagna. That's funny,
I think
lasagna.
one of the things that I advocate in all my work is a method of reasoning that is used in the sciences, but also in philosophy, also in detective work. It's called the method of multiple competing hypotheses, or the method of inference to the best explanation. And it only functions well if you're open to considering the competing hypotheses. And so I just think that there's a philosopher of science that I really like from Italy named Marcello Pera, who says that science advances as scientists argue about how to interpret the evidence. And so I think that openness to competing ideas is crucial to coming to conclusions that you can put some weight down on.
Have you ever had someone debate you that you feel like had a very good argument against the things that you believe?
Because Good question, Joe.
I have been in debates with more and less skilled people on the other side.
Jimbob smells like the Blockbuster video game shelf. I didn't even have access to Blockbuster. I lived in the woods. So, like, I was first lucky to even have a friend who had Nintendo. And then I'd have to invite myself over their house, even though we weren't really friends yet. And then eventually I got my first console, which was the Sega Genesis. I mean, imagine being a kid and seeing all of your, like, you know, middle class to upper class friends with Nintendos. OG Nintendo. Blowing the cartridge. And I have to wait. I waited. I think I must have been like 12 when I finally got a Sega Genesis. So I didn't have the fluidity of games. It was very rare. Ian Carroll, $2. JB, I'll play Afghanistan Sim with you on 2000. Is that a sim? Oh, you're gonna have to teach me how to do that. I have Xbox. I play it on Xbox, so I assume that's a PC thing. So, but that sounds fun. I would do that.
Have had a general experience, a surprising.
That would be really funny.
And somewhat a common experience that has been somewhat surprising. That many of the people who have debated.
We're halfway to the goal, y'all. Thank you for everyone who got me to this point. We have an hour and 25 minutes left. I prefer we hit the goal sooner than that. I know things are a little slower in the summer. You got your kids. People are going on vacation. The internet is looping and dead and dull. I understand. But keep old Jimbob running, okay? You know, I don't want to turn into a pole start mower. Troy Throdox, $5. Shout out to BF42. I keep getting the number wrong. 2042. I pre-ordered and hated it when I came out. Reinstalled it last week, and it ain't bad. It's really fun. It's just the thing is, I'm like a newbie kind of to modern gaming, so I don't have all of the background judgment and knowledge to make judgments. I just play it, and I'm like, that sounds good. Other people get like really developed in their gaming, so that the smallest little thing in gameplay they'll look at, because they can notice it, they become snobs, and I'm just blessed to not have that. I'm like the lucky, ignorant fool with the controller. And then people are like, dude, you don't even understand how bad that game is. And I'm like, I love that. I love that. Don't ruin it for me.
Debated me about, for example, the theory of intelligent design, have come somewhat unprepared to debate the merits of what I actually have proposed or affirm or argue for. They have in their mind typically a kind of stereotypical cartoonish version of a young earth creationist in white shoes thumping the Bible from the American South or something, not that I have anything against the American South. It's just that, there's the there's this Scopes trial stereotypes. And I once had a debate on the BBC with Peter Atkins, an Oxford chemist, one of the most prominent scientific atheists.
He's such a little bitch,
and
Peter
it's still
Atkins.
up online. People can go listen to it. But almost everyone that has told me they've listened to it said he was debating a cartoon caricature of you and was not at all prepared to debate.
I remember that. Do you guys remember that debate? Peter Atkins, little smug little prick. Looks like a little British midget. Handsome Cat says, we know that what evil is based on our own standards, shaped by what causes civilizations to thrive. Well, you have a problem there, Handsome Cat, because Christianity demonstrably makes civilizations thrive, right? You can't point to any secular society or civilization that's thriving that was rooted in atheism. Secularism. So you lose pretty bad there. No wonder you don't call in. We would smack you around like a piñata. The former ex, a big $100. Thank you so much. I've been neglecting my Jortlandian taxes. Thank you so much. Stepping it up, the former ex. Appreciate you. W's in the chat. Everybody at least like the comment, respond to the comment. Give him some love because he gave me some love. He did it on your behalf. Okay? Jimbob, you are the right one. The rest are stupid. I'm right. You're wrong. I'm right. You're wrong. Thank you so much, the former X. I really appreciate you, man.
Your actual arguments.
Yeah.
So I've had that happen a lot.
People just like to win.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm right. You're
without,
wrong.
But there's good people on the other side.
Yeah,
I think,
for
I
sure.
recently had a good conversation with Michael Shermer, who's, the well-known editor of Skeptic magazine, on your friend Brian Callen's show. It was a very good discussion.
Evan Lord, you were paid to restore. By the way, Evan Lord, every time you come on a panel, I'm so excited because you're so autistic. But you ask really good questions, Evan Lord. Really good questions. So the one you asked on the panel, I think you were the first to ask it. That was really a brutal question for that guy, wasn't it, Evan Lord? So shout out to Evan Lord. I just watch with such glee and excitement because I know it's going to be so hyper-specific and autistic. I just love it every time.
There was I've had good discussions with Ruse, a terrific astronomer at University of Washington, Peter Ward.
Was slavery evil or justified? Slavery could be justified, actually. You couldn't tell me why it's evil objectively, handsome cat. There could be circumstances where slavery is the most moral thing you can do, handsome cat. So you think that's some sort of trap? Well, you might be used to soft Christians backpedaling and being like, oh, that sounds bad. Well, no. If you just do a little bit of thinking, you can definitely present a circumstance where almost everyone you know agree that slavery, certainly indentured servitude, but slavery could be the most moral thing. And it could happen during a time period where there's intense, constant war. That's when slavery could be a moral thing. Guess what? The alternative to slavery, if the alternative, handsome cat, to slavery is putting everyone to death, you tell me what's more moral if that's the only two options you're given. Your enemies either continue to fight you and you imprison them and enslave them and rehabilitate them, or you slaughter them. What's more moral, buddy? You tell me. From your non-existent moral lens, by the way. Suzanne Griffith, donating to the Griftith, $5, Jimbob. You're too cool for school. I know, I'm feeling cool. You know why, Suzanne? Because my debate had 10,000 views in like a day. So I'm famous and awesome. So I wear glasses on those days. So when I do good, you guys get different glasses. That's it. That's what you guys get out of this channel. Handsome cat sucks. Really, yeah. Low tier. Thoughtless beanbag. Snagglebee's $5. Don't forget that Jortlandia has a sale of titles program. Join the royalty today and upgrade that work visa. Yeah, thank you for that, Snagglebees. Don't just have a work visa. I purposely made a work visa so you felt like less of a citizen. Not a citizen at all, in fact. The whole point was like, you're in a work visa, people are looking at you sideways, they're wondering if you have an accent. You know what I mean? Kevin House says, you could say Rome fell right after converting to Christianity and led to the Dark Ages. Someone could try to argue. I would disagree with that. I would say the Christian empire stood for like hundreds to thousands more than longer than anything else. But I will point out, Kevin, that just because something lasts a long time doesn't mean it's good. So you have to watch it, not you, but me or anyone arguing this time frame of something. You can't really just use only the time frame. If it's good, it has to be sustainable. So, but evil things, if they're sustainable, you couldn't argue they're good because they've sustained. Does that make sense? Have you read A Devil's Delusion by David Berlinski? Not read it, but I've listened to all of his talks. So he's like he's on point. I bet you got the same sense as me, dude. He's on point, but you're like, I wouldn't leave my children with him. You're like, David Berlinski, I love what you're doing, the work you're doing with cross-examining from your own atheist perspective for evolution and all its assumptions. But I have to keep my distance from you. Allah is God. No, Allah isn't God. That's false. But thank you for your $2. Allah's a demon. So I might grant that Allah exists, but Allah's not God. You know how I know this? Because to gain any knowledge at all, you need free will. To have any sort of debate about anything, to do philosophy, you need some type of will. For evil to exist, you need some type of, will in the created world. You need some ability to act and be held accountable. The problem with your God, Allah, the demon, Baal. The problem with your demon god is that that Allah's nature, his very nature, is to be ever generating, ever creating. So not only is it in your theology that Allah dictates all, type of sand Calvinism, camel Calvinism, Allah dictates all. So if you don't believe in Allah, he dictated that too. Not only that, but because he's ever creating, it's in his nature to be ever generating, he didn't even will creation. He can't violate his nature to be ever generating. Whereas the Christian God is eternally uncreated and is creative. He can create from will. You guys don't have that. You guys also don't have a standard for love. Allah is, if Allah existed as a God before creation, he'd be like the Unitarian, lowercase, heretic Christian. So things like virtues like love. Let's take love. Love is relational, and so it would be grounded in God unless it was a creature. So there's only two ways you can take this. The Unitarian or the Muslim has to say love is grounded in God's very being. But without the Trinity, you don't have a relational ontology of God. So in relation to what is love to God? And so it's self. And this actually makes sense because all of the Muslims and Unitarians I've ever met, no offense, end up being sort of self-loving. They're the priest. They're the source of all revelation. So what is it to love if the standard for love is grounded in the being of a self-loving God? Well, what is it to love is to self-love. That's self-love. You're basically feminist. You're basically like every terrible show about a woman who leaves her family because she needs self-love. You guys are gay. For the Grift Fund, Not One Step Back, $10. Thank you so much for that. Big time, $5. Will you ever wear the shades with the eagle hat? Yes, very base. Then you could add a shoulder holster. I need shoulder pads first. But
my own approach to this is I love these deep origins questions. Where did we come from? The philosophical questions. And I feel a kind of kinship with anybody who loves.
Are you still hiding from my universalist arguments? I don't know what they are, David Bentley Hart. Universalism? Whatever. It's just like an opinion. There's even people who are orthodox, who claim orthodoxy, and then they are sort of like tailored toward a universalist approach. I just don't. It's incoherent. There's no way to like, to argue it coherently. It kind of violates. The only thing I would be willing to say that's universal, that's even close. It's probably not close enough to even say that it's close, but is that every one of us will experience God after death. That's what I can say. That's my belief. That's not universalism, because just because all of us will meet God, it doesn't follow that all of us will experience, for the lack of a better term, experience God, his fire, the same way. Does that make sense? So that doesn't. And I know that's like a fake account So I like the fake accounts. They're like, hey, I'm this guy. When are you going to debate me? Diamond encrusted Abdullah, $2. I am Jesus Christ, the God of the Christians. Okay, now you're just trolling. At least make your trolls more expensive.
Those kinds of questions, even if they've come to a different conclusion about the answer to those questions than I have. So,
sorry to interrupt again, but I'm in the chat and in the video. I know this is annoying for a lot of people. I'm starting to learn it. I'm starting to get better at it. But did the Muslim in the chat answer my question? Did he answer the question as to who or what is the authority through which he interprets Scripture, in this case the Bible, correctly? Did he answer? We need the eagle sunglasses to go with the eagle hat. I know.
I
need big eagle sunglasses.
Not to view people willing to have those discussions, call them debates, as adversaries, but rather as sort of co-belligerents in an exploration.
That's a great way to put it.
And so I tend not to think afterwards about who won and who lost. If the host gets good comments because it was a good discussion, I feel that's a win.
What I mean is,
Blue-haired cat in Expedition 33.
JB Dirty Liar, no blue-haired cat in Expedition. Something is in there. I don't like it. I hate that game. I hate its movements. I just hate that you're just running and prancing around with someone and ugh. Fail. Expedition 33, fail. Feel like I'm in some future dystopian Portland or something. That's what it feels like. Icky. Yucky.
has anybody ever presented you with an argument that made you reconsider?
I've become...
Why did JB block you? I didn't block you. I see your comments. Fueled by my fire. Come on, baby, fuel my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire.
Progressively more confident in the position the longer I've examined it. I didn't start... When I
It's
started out
French?
examining
Oh,
it, I
man,
wasn't
that
fully
makes sense.
convinced. So there's been, for me, a trend line of greater confidence. There are more and less challenging arguments on the other side. The one that we hear most is intelligent design is not science. And I say, okay, well, that must presuppose a definition of science. What's your definition of science? And at that point, we usually get crickets because this type of argument is used mainly to shut people up rather than to engage the merits of the argument on the basis of the evidence and the structure of the argument presented.
See, I disagree with this. I agree with the atheist in this. In this particular item, if you will, I agree with the atheist. Taking a creation position that even if you thought God designed the universe and everything in it, that is not a question of science. Science is after creation. Science can't explain creation, and creation can't be brought into science. So this is where classical foundationalists fail, which Stephen Meyer is, classical foundationalist. And this is why it ends up, you end up defending horrific theological statements if you are bathing in classical foundationalism as a so-called, if you call yourself a Christian. You're going to skirt around the very distinct separation that you need to make between revelation and scientific inquiry. Rationalism, thinking, logic, reasoning, philosophy, reasoning yourself to God, reasoning to God. You're going to eventually put that on a pedestal and put revelation underneath you. You can't do that. I know it feels weird. I know you have social pressures. I know you run in circles where if they ask you what's the ultimate, what's your standard of epistemology, and you're like, well, I use reasoning and science and logic, and I try to come to rational responses. And if you don't say revelation from a Christian view, you're going to be in the disgusting, disease-infested hot tub called classical foundationalists with other atheists. So, Momo is a PDF. Yeah. The doors are gay. Yes. Yes. That's right, Kyle. They're subverts.
They're called in the field. They're called demarcation arguments. The idea that there are
Jimbob Morrison.
and this one is based on the assumption that if you're invoking a cause which is not materialistic,
Thank you, Murder in the Media.
Then it's by definition.
But by the way, I don't know if you're on YouTube. Obviously, you already have the account, but I think most of your streams. I love your aesthetic, Murder in the Media. It's a cool show to watch because there's always like something visually nice about that. It's refreshing. You know, because most podcasts are just, I guess they don't need extra cool thing visuals. Like, they're just dudes sitting and talking, and as long as you have 2 cameras or whatever, you're good. But I like unnecessary visuals.
Not
I do it
science.
all the time.
Okay, well then let's call it something different. What I found in my PhD research was that
7
when
more to the
people
goal, y'all.
investigate questions of origins, they're investigating questions that have both a scientific and a philosophical dimension. There's
Yeah, Dirk, send a super chat. We give you way too much. You've been on the show twice. You yap. You're taking up you're taking up real estate. You need to be taxed on your real estate alone. So, yes, Dirk, you're gonna have to send $5 or you get a 24-hour ban. We'll give you like 3 minutes to do it, Dirk. That's the deal. $5 or a 25 or 24-hour ban. That's it. Mod, Rip, you can time that if you want. 5 minutes, $5. Taking way too much real estate in my chat.
evidence that bears on the question, but whatever conclusion they draw is going to have larger implications for philosophy and worldview. If you can show that life arose by an completely undirected chemical evolutionary process, you're going to be more inclined toward a more materialistic worldview. You're going to say matter and energy are sufficient to explain how everything got here. If, as I think, the evidence of digital
Thank you,
code
Diamond
in the
Encrusted
DNA
Abdullah.
molecule and a complex information storage and processing system and those nifty developmental gene regulatory circuits I was telling you about.
You said at 2 hours he talks about the unique. Yeah, let's do that. Is it 2 hours? You said okay. Let's do that. Thank you for that. These time code help. They help a lot, dude. Really appreciate it. Okay, let's take a look here.
One hand clapping, he said. If there's an argument on one side, there's bound to be an argument on the other.
Is Bridget McCrone a man? I still think so. I don't think there's enough compelling evidence other than my own observation of the hands and just the past and stuff. But as you know, I don't think it's the first. You know, I'm even torn about Barbara Bush. There's a clip of Barbara Bush, and I'm like, what? That's a dude. I think they've been doing it for years. Fuel my fire, $5. Time me out for a week for not going to liturgy as I promised. No, I will not make some sort of penalty. As much as my impulse says yes, do that. Just go. Just go. You don't get punished from us. The punishment is your own spiritual decay. Not to be dark, but I missed liturgy for 2 straight weeks. 2 straight weeks. Sounds not much. For me, it's a lot. Maybe it's not much for some people. For me, it's like a Dementor comes knocking. It's a little those little Jimbob Dementor.
And if there's only one hand clapping, often it's because the person clapping that hand is afraid of what the other hand is going to
Jessica just did it, though. So, yeah, fine, Jessica, fine. You can do it.
say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessica just
The
does
other
it.
question I had.
It's funny.
Do you think that human beings are the ultimate expression of this intelligent design?
In this cosmos, I think there is a sense that humans are qualitatively unique in the creation, that we were made as sort of a crowning of the create the process of creation.
When you say cosmos, how are you defining? What are you defining?
Well, I'll speak as a Christian who also believes that there may be other beings besides human beings that have consciousness. The Bible speaks of angelic beings, for example. I have no direct experience of those, but I have other reasons to believe that the Bible is true, so I take things like that on the authority of the Bible, no experience of them. But of the creatures we know, I think there are qualitative differences between humans and all other forms of animals.
Even just the reasoning aspect, like from an evolutionary view, being that the evolutionary view holds that humans accidentally developed large brains and the capacity to have a consciousness and have thoughts about the past, present, future, an analytical way of seeing the world, and not only that, but communicating it with other minds, which a mind has no place in evolution. There's no such thing as a mind in evolution. What's interesting is that we go, well, why did that happen? And they're like, well, that adaptation got us out of the trees. We were able to finally communicate and do stuff, so we didn't have to be in the trees anymore, and we stood up because we could. Makes no sense. Standing up and exposing your head, the most important part of your body, exposing your head to more predators by standing up like a Q-tip is silly, but okay. But also, from that view, all of these millions of years, there's not another creature that demonstrates the same capacity at all. The same capacity, even though we're somehow without not by our strength, not by our any venom, not by any fire, not by anything else. We are the pinnacle, right? Little, dopey dudes walking around, right? The guy on the debate panel the other night with the figurines is a part of a category that is the pinnacle of all of the creatures. The one that stewards all of the animals if they wanted, right? And there's only one peculiar human category that does that. By the way, they have to explain how is it there's only one. There's not even like if you look at like a cat, you go, oh, a cat, it's kind of like a smaller version of this big cat. Well, those are totally different types, right? What do we have? We have midgets. That's probably what an evolution proponent would say. I'd be like, you have these little cats, like house cats, and you have all these different cats. And they're like, yeah, there's like breeding probably over time, making the cat smaller. Sure. But we don't get that. We don't get that with humans. We have different features, but you don't get a different thing. Like, you don't even get a different thing that's of the same category. You just get midgets. That's it. I mean, maybe we should have house midgets like we have house cats. I don't know. I would at least rent one for like a week. Sharia law enforcement. Jimbob can only talk philosophical, ungrounded gobbledygook about evolution. Well, I'm sorry to say, but to talk about any evolution, requires philosophy, you dipshit. Shows how ignorant you are. Do you know what the philosophy of science is? Sharia law enforcement? You just outed yourself as a retarded person. Evolution is mostly philosophical, by the way. Thanks for pointing that out. Hammer upgraded a membership. Thank you so much, Hammer. Appreciate that. He's a Jortlandian aristocrat. I bet it feels good to get out of that lower scale. 2 more, hit the goal, and we'll play the song, and I'll do a little dance for you. God is a demon, bro. Allah made us in his spaceship. Allah's spaceship. What does that look like? Imagine Allah's spaceship is still in the form of a camel. Ian Johnson, $5. If God real, why do things I don't like? Pretty much. And that's the foundation of atheism, isn't it? Shariah Twain. That's really funny. That's actually a good meme, dude. If she was popular right now and she wasn't like 68, I would make that a t-shirt. One shot, $10 gets us to, whoa, 51. Whoa, is this a new for YouTube? Do you guys see what I see? Do you guys see what I see? 51 of 50? I've never seen that before. Last night I watched your stream from yesterday while on my route to Washington. Bro, you gave Vegan Gains an epic beatdown, and the Discord followed up with continuous beatings for good measure. Yeah, thank you for that. I always kind of feel bad for him at the end, but he's willfully bad faith. He willfully just hates I think he hates himself. That's why I feel bad for him. He seems kind of sad. And I don't mean that as an insult. I don't mean like, oh, you're sad. I think he's legitimately sad. Poor guy. Extanglia, a massive $100. Thank you so much, Extanglia. That's very generous of you, sir. It wasn't too long ago that I was full-blown atheist libertarian. Now I'm going to liturgy with my family. Last week we met the Archbishop of our area. Thank you for what you do, Jim. Seriously. Well, God bless you, Extanglia, and acknowledgement to you for whatever was in the way, Extanglia. All of us have different things that, we just can't do it. Whatever it was that you had to get over, Extanglia, it's beautiful. So I can't wait to hear more from you guys, especially because you're always in the chats. You're always on the streams, in the chats of the streams we watch and I watch. And so it's one of my favorite things to talk with other people about not just their process of becoming Orthodox or their inquiry, even if it takes 3-5 years, right? It took me, since inquiry, almost 3 years. I just love to hear the experiences people have. Lasagna, $10, and we hit the goal. Is that a defect? Does everyone else see the 51 on the 50? I've never seen that ever before, but I'll take it. Go! Couldn't even beat myself anymore. I can't even beat myself anymore. Can't even beat myself. Elephant. So it's like goal W, but also L while I'm celebrating. Unbelievable. I don't know this number. Stop calling me. Allah is Zeus. He is fallen angel from Andromeda. Andromeda galaxy is coming for you. The Andromeda galaxy is coming for you. There's no one cares about what you think. Yum, 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 yum. Free Media US, $2. Hey, Jimbob. Great stream as per usual. Hi, chat. Hello. Thank you for that. I think that is a glitch. I think it's a glitch. That's a fun glitch. 51 of 50. I love that. $51.50. The code is a danger to yourself and others. That's funny. Makes sense.
Animals that make us special. Our ability to use language, for example. Our ability to experience humor. Our ability to use mathematics. Our ability to have conversations like this one.
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
We know orcas have a very complex language. We know dolphins have very...
We know. Even saying language for a dolphin, I don't even grant that for a dolphin. I would grant some type of communication, obviously, but communication of output, input, and response, and having some type of understanding. Obviously, to me, it seems obvious that something like a dolphin, there's probably a whole slew of things we can point to that, including like a crow, has some type of mechanism of a processor that reflects a behavior that we go, whoa, that's pretty crazy. But language itself, just saying language, is a loaded thing to say, because what we know of language is that we associate language not just with some sort of sound input response. It actually includes symbols, like imagery symbols, like the complexity of what a language is as we refer to it. So I would say this is a category error for Joe. Maybe you can colloquially use the word language for the sake of the function of it, right? But as far as what language is as we know it is way more inclusive than just call response mechanisms that somehow facilitate behavior. You know what I mean? He's like, we know they have complex. Well, don't be so quick to say we know. We know.
Very complex
Love
language.
dolphins.
We know monkeys experience humor.
Oh, take a sip, dude.
Do they tell jokes? Don't know.
They joke with each other.
Yeah, there's playfulness.
Playfulness is it's like a dog. That's like a dog wags his tail, and is Joe Rogan doing stand-up jokes to the monkeys to determine he's funny? Maybe he's been doing that lately. I saw his special. Could be the case. But no, you can't. See what I'm saying? Like, you can't use these terms the way we understand them from a human perspective and so just transpose them onto an animal and be like, see, they get humor. No. Meyer's right here. Playfulness, sure. Dogs are playful. I'd be willing to say there's some element of playfulness. But humor, premises, act outs, no, stop it, dude. Stop it. Jason McGinney, $2. Get back to me when orcas produce a Shakespeare, right? Please include a fart noise at the end. I will think about that. Someone made that for me.
Communicate with sounds.
Yeah.
We know that they have sounds for different animals and sounds for predators.
I think that the studies of human language show that a 3-year-old human can do things that the best chimp just there's.
That's funny. Pope is. Monkeys also fling poo. Yeah, it's intelligent.
A qualitative difference in the way we use language, in the complexity of the language forms, and Chomsky's universal grammar idea.
We also watch animals also kill each other, all sorts of things. It's like they understand humor. That's what the claim is going to be. They understand humor, but they don't understand. Like, humor is super subtle, right? Even our autistic humans can't understand humor. Right? But Joe Rogan's saying that animals, monkeys understand humor. No, we're not using the term humor in the same way. That's for sure. Because if they were to understand the subtlety of humor, wouldn't they understand the extremeness of, like, killing? Like, they pick up on the subtlety of humor, but they don't pick up on something as brutal as, I don't know, the bonobo mom or dad monkey just smashing the baby's head on a rock. They think that's funny too. Shariah says, Jimbob doesn't understand humor, unfunniest stream out there. I disagree. I laugh at myself all the time.
But you know that chimpanzees are, in fact, even better at solving some puzzles with rewards for food than humans.
Sure.
Like 6th grade roasting people? Yeah, that's funny. Especially like an adult using 7th grade dumb humor is, to me, that's funny to me. It's actually more wholesome too.
Than young humans.
I think there's a Skinnerian account of animal behavior that's pretty good. I think there's a not good. I think the Skinnerian account of human language was pretty much refuted by Chomsky in the 60s, and I think there's something much deeper going on with human language. It's not an area of particular expertise, but my colleague David Berlinski is very interested in this and has corresponded with Chomsky over the years.
Chomsky.
And he told a story about Chomsky at a conference that I attended, where he said that Chomsky was at one point very openly skeptical about Darwinian accounts of the origin of language, and then was later sort of pressured.
Speaking of comedy, I got a DM message from somebody on like X, and they said they were like, I have incurable cancer. Can you help me? And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. It's a contradiction.
To walk some of those, some of that skepticism back, and but he said, okay, language could have evolved, but there would have had to have been sort of a pre-existing universal grammar that allowed people to make sense of all the to develop a symbol convention that would allow communication, and this would have had to have arisen very, very abrupt.
Xanglia says for $10, monkeys fling poo. Yeah, well, I clean bathrooms at a county building. Fallen humans aren't far from monkeys. Fling poo. You clean the flung poo. Good on you, Xanglia. Someone's got to clean it up.
Abruptly, it couldn't have gradually emerged.
Why?
I'm just telling the story for now,
Right?
Because I'm not an expert on the origin of language. But Berlinski finished the story and said, "Well, that's great, Noam, but why not then call that what it sounds like, which is a miracle? You have this. Here's the problem, I think, as I understand it. If we've got just tapping and scratching and pointing, okay, so I say red, 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 and you say, okay, red, red, red. So we're going to develop a symbol convention with. Here's the problem: to get a symbol convention going in order to communicate, you need a symbol convention. That's the circularity.
I'm glad he pointed to this, because that's my first criticism of Joe saying we know that these dolphins have complex language. Well, no, that would require what he just said, a symbol convention. That sounds like a really fun weekend.
Of it. And the behaviorist idea is, well, maybe we could do that with pointing and grunting, okay, and rewards. That might work for nouns, okay, red, tree, ball, shirt, whatever. But how do you express something like the subjunctive tense with pointing and grunting and rewards? What I would have done is, or the imperative, what I should do.
How can I prove to you that I'm Christ? You've already disproved it. You wouldn't be in my chat saying you're Christ. It wouldn't make any sense. Get out of here.
Is that all human languages have these multiple tenses. It's something really striking. They're in all languages. And it's very hard to imagine how you could express that subtlety conveyed by those tenses without already having the universal grammar or those language structures built into the brain.
Well, I don't understand that at all. If you're learning how to describe things around you with sound, and if you have a sound that you
He's already, dude, Joe is so roasted, honestly. He's just so burned out. Notice what he just said. If you're going to describe things around you, okay, you've already assumed that you have a mind, the capacity to distinguish very specific things and put them in categories. That's what's in question. So if you're going to say an animal like a dolphin or anything else has complex language and you're trying to make it analogous to the kind of language humans have, you're already assuming that they have the capacity to distinguish themselves as an identity distinct from other identities in categories, naming those categories, communicating those categories, but not only that, communicating particulars as subcategories of the categories. He just gives himself, he's just like, oh, you just explain the external world and name things. Yeah. That's you just proved Meyer, unfortunately, he's probably like, dude, I love doing this show, but it's like talking to like some like 10th grader who took a bong rip in his basement. It's like, dude, sharpen up. Sharpen up.
Associate for different objects, a sound that you associate for different feelings, a sound that you associate with love, and it's universally agreed upon. And we know that varies so widely along the world. If you go to some cultures, like a good example is Australia, the
turbo
what
normie. That's
mobs
funny.
Of these
Turbo normie?
indigenous people, when they call themselves mobs, when they could travel just a few hundred kilometers, and they experience a language they have no understanding of at all. Another 50 kilometers that way, the same thing. They don't know how many languages they have. They don't know how many of them are lost. These people develop these languages like in isolation in these small groups. And within the people that were indigenous to Australia, there's like, God, my friend Adam Greentree explained this to me. I don't want to.
Did he just say Adam Green as your friend? No, he did not. No way. That can't be true. I misheard that. Dude, I would pay money. I would pay up to like maybe just for the potential to do commentary on. I think I would pay about $300 to have Adam Green on Joe Rogan. Wouldn't you? I mean, isn't that something you'd like almost raise money for? Everybody wants their like friends and special friends, to be on Rogan. The go-to is like, oh, we got to get you on Rogan, we got to get Andrew on Rogan, we got to get Jay on. I agree with all of that, but I'd be lying to say I wasn't partial to getting the lol cows on Rogan instead. You know what I mean? Like, get Ben Thorpe on Rogan. Thank you, Lasagna. Someone got gifted a visa today.
I want to say I don't want to misstate how many different languages there are, but I believe it's hundreds of different languages, and they don't understand each other. But they develop these in isolation.
Wes Watson, dude. Yeah, Wes Watson should have been on Rogan, obviously. If you want good content, are you kidding me? Wes Watson yelling at Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan would have a ball, by the way. Joe Rogan's a little bit, he's a bit leveled off now, but he would know exactly what to do with Wes Watson.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're both talking somewhat derivatively based on this isn't my area of expertise.
Right, it's not mine either. But
I'll tell you
imagine a world? Couldn't you imagine where over time,
can you imagine
cultures who existed in the same sort of harmonious groups and learned to till the soil together and hunt and gather and do things together and raise their children together, they would develop sounds that they all agreed upon, which means certain things.
But I think Chomsky's argument was that is only possible because there are innate language structures where people already intuitively understand these differences in tense.
Yeah, dude. Look at the intuition. Anyone who has kids understands that there is an unobservable thing that happens that goes beyond teaching, where the kid develops not only specific ways of saying things, but develops their own unique way of saying things without being taught the context in which they're saying it. Does that make sense? The schema that allows for language must already be there. Language isn't just word to sound. That's what Meyer's saying that Joe's not understanding. Meyer's actually referencing Chomsky, who's a linguist. So he's talking about what's necessary. Another form, not of a tag, but a kind of precondition argument, right? This is what he's saying. There's a precondition for whatever Joe's calling the development of language. No. Whatever way in which we exist, the way we are as humans, allows for the development. That's what's in question. It's not that it just develops. Oh, language develops. No. Nothing develops conceptually without all of the preconditions for conceptual things to develop, including symbols, sounds for things, for categories. I think Meyer could get more specific here to make Joe understand. Let's look at it like mechanically what's happening. He's saying a sound is developed for a thing, but you need an idea of the thing to apply the sound. The sound doesn't make the thing a thing, Joe. Joe? The sound doesn't make the thing.
Could you get from, I mean, in a way, the thing is to turn it back on the person who thinks the pointing and grunting is going to be enough. How do you get, I can get to red. I may even be able to get to run.
Okay.
But how do I get to what I would have done?
Don't you do that over time? Don't you?
Over time, every time. Gradualism. Unfathomable. Gradualism. Don't you just add time to it? If you add time to like any process, doesn't it produce the outcome you want? You just add time? If I just give anyone some time, do they learn complex mathematics in the woods without a teacher? Bible first, do you believe in self-evident truth? No. Self-evident truth doesn't exist. The only thing closest to self-evident truth is Christ, the being I am. It's the only type of form of a cogito that makes any sense. But even that, the way it's said, self-evident. There are no self-evident facts, Bible first. The reason is because anything you call a fact is relying on something that's not self-evident, like your own reasoning, like your own ability to interpret sense data and evaluate it, propositions. Figuring out whether a proposition comports with reality, that's not self-evident. So no, I do not.
You do that over time of adjusting the sounds and developing these ideas?
What do you point at to get at something, a thought
You
that's
don't
subtle?
have to point to it. You just have to develop a whole structure of language over time where it's agreed upon.
He doesn't understand what he's saying, dude. Joe's making the evolution argument, basically. Meyer's like, time doesn't explain what's necessary to develop complex language. Joe says, no, what about over time you just develop complex language? And they're talking past each other. Meyer's going, no, to do that, you have to tell me the components of what needs to be the case to develop that language. You don't just name a rock and then suddenly the category exists, because you're already pointing to the thing. You already have an idea of what you're pointing to name it.
And that's why the thing about
that was Chomsky's point, is the agreement is innate. We already have the language structures for those different tenses. That's why they're universal across languages. And so he did not think that they evolved in a gradual Darwinian way. And I can't see it. I mean, maybe you could unpack that sequence, but
So Chomsky himself believed that they were innate to the human animal.
I think that's right. That was his idea of the universal grammar.
And what did he think it came from?
At one point he said he was a Jeffersonian creationist, meaning not a religious creationist. At another point he said he was skeptical about Darwinism, and then later I think he said, well, it could have evolved, but the conditions he put on a successful evolutionary process were ones that were not strictly...
Getting angry. Rogan's blockhead. Yeah, I know, dude. He has a very blocky head.
Speaking neo-Darwinian. They were certainly not gradualistic. And I do think it's just something for consideration.
Here's what I'll just kind of skip to before we wrap up. I have a lot of work to do for Ortho Thugs, so you all should be very excited about that. But Ogden says, so it already was there, like logic, never changing. I don't know what you're referring to, but I actually agree with the comment. It's relevant to what I was thinking, which is the categories that we distinguish with our experience that happen, obviously mentally. That's what's occurring. There's reason to believe that's some sort of mind participation with other minds. The thing that we're distinguishing as a particular or a category of particulars, let's use a tree or a rock or a frog or a deer or a lion, whatever it is, those categories have an ontology that humans in particular can innately discover before language is applied to them. And this makes sense because you can't describe something with a reference or a description unless you already have a sense of what you're about to describe. The thing, the category you're trying to sort of apply language to with a symbol, you already have to have a conception, otherwise you wouldn't know what you were trying to describe. I would say this is evidence, a type of evidence for a type of existence, a type of ontology for universal categories. That's, to me, that's evident. That's evidence for that. As opposed to, no, all of it's just totally fabricated, autonomously. Joe is trying to argue for autonomy, that we build truth upward, as opposed to we use tools like language to describe truth that's discovered, not crafted truth, not built up blocks of truth. We're discovering and describing things that are discoverable. What's a discovery if it didn't already exist? That's what I always ask these naturalists. What the hell is a discovery if it didn't already exist? Can you imagine doing like one of those, what do you call it? Scavenger hunt? Can you imagine doing a scavenger hunt and everyone's all excited to do a scavenger hunt, and then the person who's organizing the scavenger hunt says, by the way, the things you're discovering in this scavenger hunt don't exist until you find them. You just kind of define them into existence. Like they just don't exist. You're not discovering anything. It's like scavenger hunt epistemology. But with there's nothing there. There's nothing hidden. There's nothing there. You just describe your own things into existence. It's a scavenger hunt where you describe the things you find in existence. They're not actually there. Anywho. Let's see if there's a part I can complete on this. Because I don't want to overdo it.
I've thought about a lot that makes sense to me. How do you get a communication system started without a communication system to define the terms on a mutually agreeable basis?
Don't you think that can just evolve over time?
Dude, I'm gonna fight you, Joe. I'll lose. You'll put me in a wheelchair. Don't you think that this just happens over time? What doesn't happen over time, Joe Rogan? You numbskull. You dork. I still have hope for you, though. I still have a type of love for Joe Rogan and a hope and a want and a prayer. Won't everything that happen over time? Yeah, dude, everything happens over time. This kalimba is occurring over time. Well, how do you think they won the race? How do you think they won the marathon? Well, don't you think that they won the race over time? Yeah, great work. Great work. Why haven't other animals done the same thing? Yeah, it's so advantageous, Jay Bailey. It is. From the evolutionary view, the development of human mental capacity, philosophical capacity, linguistic capacity, we're able to literally control the world. We're stewards of the world. Well, from a Christian view, it makes sense. We're stewards of the world. Stewards of the animals, at least, Essentially, we're in this creation here, and we're the ones who are peculiar to wielding it. No other animal, it's not even trying to compete with us. There's not even is that what the dolphins are doing, maybe? Maybe every time they pop out of the water, they're like, fractional reserve banking's a mistake. Sounds more like a sheep. Is that what they're doing? Maybe that's them competing. Maybe they're volunteering themselves to SeaWorld, and it's all just a COINTELPRO. They're just trying to figure it out. They're like, okay, they use force. They have these things called rights, which is weird. They have a constitution, some of them. How do we take this away from them? With our flippers. I'm going to describe my nub gradually over years into full-size one. Nice, Brady. Nice. Yeah. That's funny. Christopher Scott, $5. With those tiny shoulders, you'd be able to duck and weave much. Yeah, he couldn't get a hold of me. You can't even do there's so many holds that you can't do on me because of my little ladybug shoulders. Maybe I shouldn't grow them out. Maybe I should cancel the implants. Should I? It's not the dolphins we need to watch. It's those damn octopuses and their plot. They are plotting. I don't trust an octopus. Messed up. I showed my eyes. Something tells me Jimbob bites, and I don't know if Joey's... I would bite. I mean, it's kind of a dick move. But whatever I had to use to fight off my 3 older brothers, sometimes I would just look at them in a way that they couldn't trust me. They couldn't trust me enough to go to sleep. It's like they weren't thinking like I couldn't handle this kid in a fight. A normal fight, but they look at me in my eyes and they go, but is it going to be a normal fight? Is it? Well, is it? No, it's not going to be a normal fight. I'm not going to fight normally. Why would I do that? These aren't my red bar glasses. In fact, I was disenchanted with my current red bar because I was looking at his, and his are darker. And I think to do an impersonation of red bar, I actually need to hide my eyes more. I wish my hair would turn whiter. That would help. I mean, I won't consider myself a success until red bar plays a clip of me being red bar. So, he doesn't like impressions, though, really. He kind of cringes at them. And it's true. They're kind of cringy. All of us. All of us doing impressions. There's a level of cringiness that we have to accept. It's about 13 to 22%. No matter who's doing it, no matter how good they are, there's no way of escaping that the nature of an impression is part cringe. Part cringe.
I don't.
Where it's adjusting, and
Yeah,
language itself
I'm
during our
skeptical.
lifetime is evolving.
I think the burden of proof is on the evolutionist to provide an account of how that happened. I don't think that's been done.
Back to the original
Yeah, yeah.
question.
Anyway.
Do you think
Also, language evolving is like, the language, the symbols, the sounds could evolve, the meaning, but the thing that's being referred to doesn't evolve. The thing that's being referred to doesn't evolve. The sound, sure.
that human beings are the ultimate expression?
I think we were I guess I would just say yes. I think we were the
Do you think we're done?
pinnacle of creation.
You think this is it? This is as good as it gets? Or do you think we evolve past this?
Evolved.
Well,
Joe, he doesn't believe in evolution. Do you think this is it, or do you think we evolved past this? I'm literally doing a podcast with you, Joe, denying evolution.
I think that there will be a new creation. That's part of the biblical view.
A new creation?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think there is in the human our human experience. There's both evidence of our great capacity for creativity and nobility, but also the idea that something's not as it was initially intended in our nature as well. And so
Does anyone know what is he like evangelical, or does anyone know? Maybe he's not too public about it, but I would be interested to know, because I don't hear him. I don't hear his theological takes. I haven't dug in enough, but it'd be interesting to know what his thing is. Does anyone know in the chat? Anybody go to his fog machine church? Anybody? Want to hear your bagel ant impression? And by bagel ant, do you mean Dave Smith?
Oh. Why are we getting in a fight with these other countries, huh? Oi! Why are you not eating the food I made you? Eat! Get fat! You need to be more healthy, you need to gain weight. Let's watch a Billy Crystal movie. Oi. Oi!
Surely not an evangelical, hopefully. I'm not sure what he is. Maybe he just doesn't even... I don't know. I don't know what he is. What is he? Someone tell me. Can we take guesses? Dave Portnoy?
Oh. Oi.
Don't get him started, I know. I'll dance right out of here. Don't get me started. I'll somehow lift my own chair like they do at the weddings. Whatever that's called. Said he was denominationally confused. No way, really? Wow. He's got dysphoria. He's got body of Christ dysphoria. Poor guy. I'll pray for him. Prayers for Stephen Meyer to... yeah. Send your prayers to Stephen Meyer. Being denominationally confused is kind of redundant, though, isn't it? That's what's confusing. It's like not denominationally confused, is that if you hold to that there's a denomination that any of that is valid, you're already confused. Hello, Hurricane with a K. Havoc with a K. He's a black Hebrew. Yes. He's a black Hebrew Israelite. Yeah.
Oi!